Well, what's happening, crew? How y'all doing all out there? It is hotter than swamp ass out here. Hopefully you all had a good weekend. And now that you can see, I'm sure many of you keep up with the events of the day and things like that. You know what's going on out there for the most part. What's up, Ed Shoe? How are you? Lori TX. Good to see a lot of the regulars come filing back in here. As some of you may know, I took what we'll just refer to it as a vacation, which it was. I got to see some sights. Did have to take care of some business, but I can't really talk about it here. And had a lot of drive time, a lot of thinking time. So I wanted to come on and, in the light of today's developments, even though it's Sunday, it's Monday in other parts of the world, but we've got all kinds of retarded stuff happening. I thought, oh, Sunday will be a good day. I'll get back from traveling and unpack and get some stuff squared away, get the grass cut, because it's up to my knees out there in places now because I ignored it for a week, and I couldn't even do that without Israel bombing Beirut and getting the Middle East war started back up again. Couldn't even relax for a day. The Zionists just don't stop. Hello, Ramjet. How are you guys doing? So, let me turn this down a little bit. All right, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. And the background music isn't too loud. If the background music is too loud, just let me know. Hello, Leslie. Good to see you. I lost a few subscribers. I had a busy week of work. The week previous, had to get some stuff squared away before I left for my trip, and was gone for a week and was in a lot of areas without cell service. Thank you, Ed Shoe, for the loud and clear. Lima Charlie. Thank you, Charlotte, for the 5x5. That feedback does help. I do see your comments. I do see everyone's comments. I am all-knowing, all-seeing, the SoIL on YouTube. But yeah, I lost just a handful of subscribers, I guess, because I wasn't entertaining as often as I should be, according to the algorithm. So those people said, I am not entertained, like in Gladiator. I'm not entertained. I'm blowing this popsicle stand of a channel, which is fine. But anyway, I'm not butthurt over it or anything. Quick recap of the day, of the last 24 hours or so, which many of you already know, but you're going to see the ramifications through this coming week, because we are about out of time as a country as far as our being able to keep a lid on the petroleum supply shock and other material supply shock that's going on. And because nonsense has restarted, there will be even deeper ramifications that will ripple through the economy. So Timu Jesus had very clearly instructed and let everyone know that for the 24th or 25th time, a deal was about to be reached. All was about to be settled and squared away, and there was going to be everlasting peace for 300 million years in the Middle East because of the shart of the steel. I mean, the art of the deal, I'm sorry. The shart of the steel was going to, David Kushner and Woodcoff and T-Man, True Social Account was going to just settle generations upon generations of poor planning as far as borders and trying to carve out countries as an empire. Not the United States, the British. That fault lies strictly with, Sykes-Picot, World War I. But yeah, since that mess happened, and other groups came to take advantage of it in the early 19th century, that was all going to get straightened out by a couple True Social tweets and, whatever, messages. And it was all going to be fine today or tomorrow or Wednesday. And those darn juice boxes got out of pocket, started bombing Beirut, and that happens to be part of the ceasefire, so that was a no bueno. So some more missiles were launched, and of course pro-Western, pro-Israeli outlets said none hit the ground, but it'll only take you about 2 minutes of searching to find out that they were kind of caught flat-footed, like they didn't believe they were actually going to let loose a barrage. And some indeed did make it through. It doesn't take very long to find the recent video evidence of. But anyway, none made it through. A deal was almost here. And other Brothers Grimm fairy tales, I'm sure. But because of this, let's just cut straight to the chase. What's whipping around the world and going to be coming here tomorrow, our local time, Eastern through Pacific time. The Korean stock markets, for some unknown reason, have dropped 8%, and their market circuit breakers have tripped and halted trading. So, guess what the Wall Street boys are going to wake up to on Monday? And what does that mean for you? Well, if you got a 401k, they're going to rob some more from it. No worries. Just work until you're 140. You'll be good. So yeah. So I thought, well, I got the grass cut. Unfortunately heard all that while I was cutting grass and previous to, while I was doing a little bit of surfing. I was so close to not even opening the computer. I was so close to not even opening the computer today. I thought I'll just pick up the yard and mess around and not even look at it. But I had some break-ins there on what I was listening to for the news, and it's like, oh, dang it. So I did, like I said, had a pretty good road trip. Saw some sights in the Northwest U.S. area I haven't been to before and I've always wanted to go to. So I'm going to forcefully subject whoever sticks around later to some of my vacation pictures. I curated a couple of them that are safe and for my OPSEC and for my family's OPSEC. Nope, didn't go surfing. Unfortunately, caught the waves of the web there, Tracy. And yeah, it'll be just another manic Monday. So you'll get to see some cool pictures of Northwest Washington State, or northeast corner of Washington State, and I dived in up to Canada because I had some business to take care of up there, into British Columbia, southern British Columbia, and then worked my way over to southern Alberta, and then dipped back down to the east side of Glacier National Park, and I was able to fortunately have enough time to hike a trail at St. Mary's and Bering Falls, St. Mary's Falls, Bering Falls. So I've got pictures. The Glacier National Park is absolutely gorgeous. My God, in June. As soon as I got into the park and hopped out of the car, take a picture of the sign, it's just, you're hit with this subtle, sweet aroma of pine and alpine flowers that are all starting to bloom in June. And it's just gorgeous. It's very different from summers in southern Illinois, that's for sure. Because out here on the compound, if the wind isn't right, you're either going to hit the sensory, the notes of chicken barns, which is not pleasant in the summertime. Excuse me, or some farms that are in the area. But if the wind is just right, you will smell the deep woods and flowers and stuff like that in the woods out here, which is fine. That's all fine and dandy, but the wind's not always in my favor out here for the old nasal passages. So, yeah, you guys hang around. Grandson's working at Glacier this summer. Awesome. He is in paradise. Yes, I was in Alberta, just southern Alberta. Had a few stops. I had a few stops in Canada on the old road trip. And I can show you some places that I stopped privately. I can't show you some of the places that I had to stop for business. But yeah. So what do you guys want? You want to start with the good stuff first? Because I do have some thoughts. I might end up ranting and raving for a while because I had a lot of time to drive and think and process, and I don't know how well formulated my thoughts are. Yeah, fresh country air. Waterton Park, I don't know, is that one of the provincial parks in BC or Alberta? Let's see. I was close to one of the provincial parks. Yep, smoke 'em if you got 'em, Leslie. All right, let's check the news wire here to see if anything's just completely getting out of pocket here. We'll cover that first. So we got Timu Jesus walking out of... I'm looking at some of this stuff fresh on X. Some of these stories from over the weekend. So we got Timu Jesus angrily storms out of an interview with an NBC reporter. I mean, that's no big surprise, is it, to anybody, really? I don't even know what it was about, but the pictures are funny. The scowling look of both of them. Leaning forward, isn't that what NBC's deal was for a while? Let's lean forward. Waterton Park, provincial park in the southwestern Alberta, close to Montana. Yeah, actually, I think I did just grace by. I was on 3 and 3B quite a bit. Ramjet. I came up through is it Cardston? Is where I came into BC, if I'm saying that right. And then, let me check so I don't tell you wrong. Well, look at the old map here real quick. I hit a lot of places. I did do a lot of driving on these type of trips, and those little towns just, they can fly by. And it helps me tie, that's why I take a lot of pictures, because it helps me tie when I go back and think about these trips that I take, where I was and what order I did the driving and all that kind of good stuff. So, let's see how close I got. Yeah, not Cardston. That was where that was the last Canadian town before I came back into Montana from Alberta. So I think I crossed at between Northport and Roslyn on 22, and I came up 22, and I had to go all the way around because there was some kind of wreck. My original route was going to be like 22A to 38 in BC, and head for Salmo was going to be my first stop, and I had to go all the way up and around through Riverdale, or no, not through Riverdale. I had to backtrack a little bit and go all the way up 3B at Rossland to 3, and then over to like Castlegar and Blueberry Creek, and then hit 3 back over to Salmo because there was some huge wreck or something in Trail, between Rossland and Trail in British Columbia. And the border guard was nice enough to clue me in and let me know. That it was not passable, or at least it would be hours until stuff passed. Hang on, I'm gonna grab another beer. It's, like I said, it's hot out here. Compared to 60 degrees and rich oxygen, alpine environment, and you come back home and it's 85, 87 degrees and swamp ass. Radio's been fairly quiet. There was a tactical EAM earlier in the European theater, like right as the missiles were starting to fly. Nice cold Youngling. Should help keep the heat stroke at bay. And the other thing that caught my eye, I should let you guys know about, because they're really not letting you see a lot of aircraft movement, but we have and it's already landed in Tinker, but a aircraft of unknown type took off out of Spirit of St. Louis, flew directly to Tinker. It was NA the whole way, landed at Tinker in Oklahoma City, and now they've got Blackhawks up in Tulsa and in between Kansas City, or Oklahoma City, I'm sorry, and Tulsa. So usually when you start to see stuff like that on ADSB, they're moving strategic aircraft around. That normally doesn't get on ADSB, and someone forgot to flip a switch. Not that we can do anything, because we are currently, as far as we, I mean the United States, is currently hamstrung from really, we really can't even strike back if our bases get attacked over there, because of how poorly managed, mismanaged, and poorly handled this unnecessary act of aggression has been carried out. we're in a really, really dumb spot. And some of you might remember months ago, I predicted that we were going to get into a very dumb spot, and this was going to hurt a lot of Americans, both military and civilian. It's going to hurt our economy. It is a 100% fool's errand. And it was very unpopular for me to say, as anytime cautions and warnings are before you get into a conflict with another country, because you're supposed to pick up the pom-poms, you're supposed to pick up the flag, and you're supposed to brainlessly wave them around and tie yellow ribbons around the tree and all that stuff. And that's some of the stuff I was thinking about as I was driving. You can be a patriot and not support unfettered war. You don't have to be a warmonger to be a patriot. Sometimes the most patriotic thing that you can do is to say, hey guys, this isn't a good idea. For quite a few reasons. I'm actually going to turn this music off as I rant here, so I'm heard clearly. But as I was driving, I was thinking about this, and you know, I was meeting people, and meeting with people, and meeting people. Little businesses, little restaurants, places that I had to go to. And you're just having some small talk and some conversations and talking about things going on in the world, because that's part of it. And you come to realize that it has been very effective breaking us up in between red and blue and purple and no color and donkeys and elephants and rainbow hair and never rainbow hair and this flag and that flag. And when you step back and look at the big picture, that's been horrifically effective to our culture, and as far as making us pretty much toothless and allowing the government to run wild, run amok, our quote-unquote leaders that are supposed to be our representatives. Because I was in some areas that how do I describe it? They were rural and they were small town, but they were very much entrenched, a lot because of COVID flight and stuff like that. A lot of progressives and other people moved into very, conservative areas and small towns. There's been a lot of population flop at least in my opinion, it seems to me like there's been a lot of population flop into these rural areas in Montana and stuff like that. And in southern BC and southern Alberta and some of these small towns. So you don't really run into who you expect to run into in some of these places, like, Farmer John in the overalls at the seed store. I was in some towns that had probably less than 1,000 people that had these little coffee shops. And you'd stop to get something to drink and get refreshed while you're on the road, or get a bite to eat. And you talk to some of these people and you realize that same thing I've been saying, whatever side of the political line you want to paint for yourself and dive across, we're really not that different. We're all North Americans. But to complete my thought before I get too out of skitter here, I had the epiphany as I was driving that you can be what in popular culture would be a red-blooded American, flag-waving, gun-toting, Bible-thumping, patriot, Fox News watcher, Republican, anti-Obama, F Joe Biden. And you can be all those things, but when it comes time to make a decision about a certain thing, if you let those stripes decide for you, you can actually end up doing the most un-American, unpatriotic, damaging thing to your own country. And that's not patriotic at all. And that's not pro-American at all. Because you let planks in a party carve out the path of your decision-making process. So let that sink in for a little bit. You can be, and I mean this with no disrespect. You can change the planks at will. Okay, but if you let these jokers think for you, you're going to end up with bumper sticker brain, and you're going to be supporting causes. It won't take too much time. You'll end up supporting causes and supporting actions that are as anti-American, unpatriotic, anti-Constitution as can be. And it goes back to the old saying, it's easier to fool someone than convince them that they were fooled, that they have been fooled. And I think that's what we got going on. And I think that's where the disconnect is and the current rift between the MAGAs and the non-MAGAs and the Republicans. I think that's where all that dust-up came about. Because a good fraction of the supporters of the party in power currently in the United States said, what about this is America first? This is the whole reason we put you in office. Why are you doing dumb stuff for another country? As a log of 80-20 hamburger approaches $75 in some parts of the country, what are we doing? What part of let's sell out our beef farmers and ranchers both, let's tariff the crap out of our neighbors to the north. For what? And I got into a conversation with one lady in Idaho, of all places, when it was on the backswing. And she shocked both me and her, because during the course of our conversation, she was a Red Hat supporter, which is what you'd expect to find in certain places in Idaho, especially the Panhandle, northern part of Idaho. I'm thankful she didn't put out a call and have the militia come round me up, as a commie or something, which I'm not. I consider myself to be a very, very pro-American patriot. But anyway, it's like she had never come across this idea that I presented to her, which was, if the previous president was doing all this, making all these apparent decisions, even though I'm not quite sure who's making the decisions, really. But if we were put on the same track as a nation for foreign policy or domestic policy, all that kind of stuff, but it was the previous president that was a blue tie, would you have flipped parties and supported the blue tie? Or if we had a blue tie in now that was doing all this stuff, would you be dead set against it? Realize how anti-American, anti-freedom it actually is? Would you be able to step out from being a blind red tie supporter? Now, I'm not saying the blue ties are right. They're, as Ramjet correctly said there, they're both retarded. But that's their function. You know, you can have functions in mathematics, you can have equipment that does a very specific function. I am convinced, one of my epiphanies, stronger than ever, and I knew this previously, but it's stronger than ever after thinking over all the evidence now, is the function is false choice. That's the function. Not the result of having these two parties, a two-party system in the United States. Not a result of, but a function. Because all it does, as long as I've been alive, is half the country bounces up and down, and the other half is in deep depression for 4 years, and then it just flips. And the same stupid shit seems to keep happening. No matter who's in there. Some place that doesn't really need to be bombed gets bombed, and our economy takes hits that, you know, the losses are socialized and the gains are privatized. That's a whole other thing I was thinking about is before I left, I found out that Peter Thiel had pretty much fled to Argentina. I wonder why he's gigging out so quick. But just like most big, huge billionaires, they threw their chips in when it was election time, and the whole reason you get to stare at J.D. Vance memes is mostly because of Peter Thiel. If I got my eccentric billionaire financier yarns on the bulletin board correct, I'm pretty sure the whole reason J.D. Vance got in there is because of Thiel. At least they don't get in the way of brewing beer. That would be my personal limit. Anyway, while I was out there, I had Rainer beer, which is kind of like the, in our area, it's Budweiser before they were taken over by InBev. You know, you have your local beers, and out west it was always Coors, and I finally got my hands on a tall 6-pack of Rainer. That was pretty good for cheap, six can. Yeah, I've seen that Jones Plantation. I've seen that skit, and it does break it down pretty good. And being Republican does not make you a fool. Being a Democrat doesn't make you a fool. Being a Libertarian doesn't make you a fool. It's because the function of those parties is to keep you fooled. Because if you think about it, it's all theater play. Real world is out there trying to carve a life out, raise a family, have a small business without running afoul of all these regulations, laws, and the big money competition that is the 1%. That's real life for most people. But it's up to us. And that's one of my epiphanies is you can either continue on saying, I'll accept this sum of a platform from a party, whether it's Republican, Democrat, whatever it might be, the Great Spaghetti Monster Party, I don't care. Pick whatever party you want. And say, well, I have to because 70% of what they go for is what I want my country to be. But if the 30%, or even worse, and what appears to be happening lately is almost nothing of what you were promised when you pull the lever for one dude or one gal or whatever, none of it happens. And in fact, the almost inverse is enacted upon you. Then what do? I think some people go independent, some people flip parties. No. Writing letters to your senator, you think they read those? Emails to your senator, to some lower level staffer glances through those. Most of them get round filed. So if you're not part of the 1% and you can't buy your representatives to, either leave you alone or do stuff for you or pull strings for you, what do? How do you enjoy, how do you get away from it? It's one of the things I was trying to figure out. Do you disappear into the mountains? No, you can't really do that in the United States or Canada, can you? I know a lot of people here are here because they're, prepper aligned from another channel, but, joke that goes over well out in the mountain country is if you're lost in the mountains, build a shed, because the county tax assessor will find you faster than you can figure out how lost you were. And it's probably pretty much true. So I'm just going to keep doing my thing, and I made kind of a promise to myself while I was out there driving. If I'm not represented, if every time I turn around, my leaders are trying to draw lines between myself and my fellow Americans, my neighbors, other people around the world, I've kind of had a reordering of how I view social strata. I'm an American. I want what's best for the American people. I want what's best for my family, for myself, for my business interests, for my neighbors, whatever my neighbors do, whether they're farmers or machinists, or even my banker neighbors, or insurance salesmen. I want them to be able to pursue their goals, their business opportunities to raise their family, and if they want to be able to follow a certain denomination and go to church on a certain day, they should be free to do that. If they have a grievance with the government or the local town council or the state senate, they should be able to address those grievances through speaking, even though it doesn't do any good, but they should have the right. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm going to start living my life, which I kind of have been already, but with more conviction of how the founders intended. Leave me alone. Don't tax me into oblivion. And if you're going to try and tax me into oblivion, I'm going to actively try and fight it. I'm going to find every loophole and pull every trick to starve this hydra-headed beast of a government out. And I know I'm only one among millions of taxpayers. But I'm going to do everything in the book to start starving the beast. You're not going to get division on social media. I'm not going to start fights with you. I'm not going to debate you. We're just going to, what I'm going to start doing is I'm just going to start enjoying things that aren't really that. And I'm not going to have as much of a focus on it anymore. Some people might call that, manifesting, where you manifest different things, because you put your mental energy into it. I mean, I'm not going that woo-woo, but you know what I'm saying. I'm not going to give the beast oxygen, or like a narcissist craves your attention. That's what our government is. It's a horrific, greedy, bloodthirsty narcissist without a soul. It's a soulless entity. And I'm just going to help my neighbors. And I'm just going to conduct my business as honestly and fairly as I can. And if there's too many rules, regs, tax regs that stand in the way of doing a certain something, then I'm just not going to do it. I will do something else happily and not raise that revenue for a bunch of people that don't take any of my interests into account. It's like walking into Walmart and slapping down $200 for goods, and as soon as you try to leave, 18 people come out of the shadows and grab everything out of your cart, and you're left with about a third of what you started with and paid for. Why would I keep going back to Walmart? Or 2/3, depending on what level you step over. Because I've done that too with my own business. I've gone completely balls to the wall, made more money than I could keep up with, and the more you make, the more they take. Until you get to a certain point where you can buy the politicians, then you don't have to worry about it as much. But the gap between here and there was obviously too far. But all that aside, the other thing I came to grips with is, where is all this dumb stuff leading to? Specifically, a war in the Middle East that didn't need to happen. There's something else to it, and it's more than just a greater Israel project. I know why the Israelis want us involved. I get that. But why did we so willingly jump forward to do it, and then do everything we can to get hamstrung to now be powerless to do anything else? Something doesn't quite make sense there. And between tick boxes, hantavirus, Ebola, that all washed to the surface in the media cycle when there was a lull in the Operation Epiphanies. We didn't get too excited about that. I mean, everyone was kind of like, yeah, whatever. I mean, we've been through COVID. Everyone was duped in 16 different ways with all that nonsense. We're not following for the biomed stuff anymore. Sorry. However you want to take that, whether you want to say it doesn't exist, it's not as big of a threat, whatever. I think even if Ebola was raging in the Northeast and half of Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire were taken out, a good part of the country would be like, whatever, whatevs. 6-7 day, 6-7. Yeah, so that didn't have the scare factor I think they were counting on. So back to War Thunder. Back to bombs dropping and missiles flying and that dumb stuff. But what's going to ultimately happen, whether it's intentional or not, and other quote-unquote experts and subject matter experts have been warning about this for years, but it's famine. They're going to starve you out. They're going to starve you out. They're going to make it almost impossible for there's a certain name that certain government agencies on a managerial level, and I'll tell you this because this is like inside FEMA stuff. There's segments of government agencies that have a real disdain for what they call Bob. And Bob is the truck driving, small hobby farm, carpenter in the summer, taxidermist in the winter. I can shoot a deer, I can run a trot line, country boy will survive, that type. They've been trying to figure out, and by they I mean certain elements of the government, have been trying to figure out for a very long, long time on how to clip the nuts off of Bob. And you clip the nuts off of Bob by attacking his food, attacking his water, all the stuff that he says he can do and doesn't need any help with, running a trout line, skinning a buck. Well, if you make environmental conditions to where you can't garden successfully, or you completely induce drought in an area, or like what's going on in West Virginia now where you have, I don't know why, I haven't quite figured out why, but apparently they're pumping old mines full of water, fresh water, and pushing out the acid so it gets back into the runoff in the well water. And Bob can't take a shower without getting an acid burn in parts of West Virginia right now, parts of Carolinas. And you induce alpha-gal syndrome in ticks. You introduce other disease-bearing vectors in mosquitoes because Bob's going to come into contact with all that. You're going to put CWD in deer. And you can skin a buck and you can run a trout line, but if what you catch on the trout line is going to kill you from poison or turn you into a zombie after you skin it because it's a prion disease that attacks your brain and there's no cure or vaccine or anything for, well, Bob's taken care of then, isn't he? Are you or someone in your family one of those Bobs that I overheard years ago in certain halls in FEMA being trash talked? There was one incident where I poked my head in the door and asked just exactly what the fuck was being discussed in here because I didn't like what I was hearing from the hallway. because these are the people that we're supposed to be protecting and aiding in a emergency or disaster. And if I caught someone talking like that again within my earshot, we were going to have some very, very big problems. And I never got invited back to that office campus again. And it's because I'm a patriot. And I love my countrymen. I love my country. We've been blessed with a beautiful country. I saw some of the most beautiful parts of it. I've been lucky to see a lot of the beautiful parts of it all my life. And I have severe disdain for people that try and ruin it, destroy it, tie it up in regulation. I'm not a bleeding heart liberal of any sort, but I am not in favor of drilling in national parks. I was very happy to see that that was defeated, and the Alaska wilderness area was not going to be drilled in. There's other ways to get energy than to ruin your landscape and your countryside. I'll give you guys some inside baseball. Politically, where I was years and years ago was actually a very, very briefly ventured into the Tea Party movement. And that was kind of a good fit for my mentality years ago, but it was just to waste your energy. It was just to tie you up. I was very prominent in supporting Convention of States for a long time, but there again, that was a grift. It's still a grift. And if you're involved in Convention of States, you will volunteer a lot of your time and go absolutely nowhere. But you have to think about it. You have to use your critical thinking. You can be convinced, like some of the people I met on this recent trip, and I see them online. I talk to them online, in other chat rooms, other channels, not one particular channel specifically. They're all over. But they're so dyed in the wool, dead set, and tied up in a party. They think they're patriotic and they're not. You have to think for yourself, crew. Don't be afraid to be the one to speak up. If you find yourself in a position of association and you can't see yourself leaving it, at least be outspoken for what's best for your country. And what's best for your country is what's best for you, your neighbors, your family, your neighbors, your community, and innocent people around the world. Innocent people, regardless of what country they belong to. That's where I'm at. That's what patriotism means to me, as we're about a month away from 4th of July and America's 250th. Look out for the best interests of the people. And yes, there's bad people, there's evil people in the world, there's people that want to kill us for no good reason, because they themselves have been ideologically blinded by hate or misinformation. And yes, there's people here currently that are committing fraud in our system, abusing the open arms of the United States and its people. You gotta root those people out. Are you allowed to protest that action? Yes, you should. Should you be shot in the back several times by protesting it? No. There's going to be tragedy whenever there's social schisms. And unfortunately, we're gonna continue witnessing tragedy of this kind. But that's where I'm at. I'm realizing that there's a large segment of our population that thinks they're patriotic, and they're actually not. They're as anti-American as a deep red commie from the 80s. But they don't know it, and they're not gonna figure it out in time. Can you guide them? Maybe. I'll leave that up to you guys, the people that you know in your lives, and your ability to convince someone who was fooled out of it. But I'm not going to hold my breath. We're just going to have to make do with the damage that was done and carry on. Hope I'm making sense to everybody out there. I may or may not be. I'm not really looking at the analytics. I'm just kind of free spooling my thoughts here. It takes all kinds. It takes all stripes. I mean, the country truly was intended to be a melting pot. But there has to be a certain level of assimilation. You have to say, this is my country now, and I want what's best for everyone around it. I think that's where it kind of goes wrong. This is my country now, what can it do for me? You know, JFK. Ask not. That whole thing. I think that's been lost in the last generation or two. Because I don't think it really is that hard, crew. I think if you're just, if you decide you want to have a family, you do your best to ply your trade, ply your skills, do the best you can to keep food on the table and pass on lessons of decent morals and fair treatment. I can't go too deep, but we're like this weird amalgamation of labels now. Where if you're this label, then to this group you're good, and to the opposed group you're bad. And all you gotta do is slap a label on something, and you get 50% of the population in your corner. That's not how it's supposed to work. That's not how anything works in the world. That's very weird and artificial if you think about it. If you do morally correct and ethical action, you should get all kinds of support. In business, if you offer a service and you're priced fairly, you provide a good quality product or service or both, it shouldn't matter what your stripes are, what your political stripes are. But here in the last couple of years, we've had cancel culture, and this group will make a cake for that group, but won't for that group, and courts get involved, and it's all. What are we doing? What are we doing here? I think a lot of people are running around confused and scared. And they should be, because, I'm not surprised that that's the goal. Because I think the 10-year plan is to confuse until it's too late, and By the time it's too late, people can't do anything about it. You can't organize. You can't really prepare. You know, if you think about the preparedness, the prepper movement, you know, that's the other thing too, is there's, with rugged individualism being a cornerstone of one party, that's really not how it works, right? That's really not how churches work. That's really not how communities should work. And a lot of prepping is basically boiled down to, well, I kind of got mine. And then you come back out of that here lately, and the movement is, well, now you need a community. No, you needed to have a community from the start. You know, whether that's religious based, whether that's, you know, just into the melting pot ethnically based. Some do better jobs than others, but your average Bob. And when I was doing outreach with FEMA and stuff like that, in between state and military and local governments and stuff like that, you know, you meet a lot of ham operators in the MCOM groups, ARES and different things like that for training. At least I did. And yeah, you can have a family, you can have an extended family group that stands a pretty good chance, but you do need the community. But that needs to be the start, not after the fact. And that's one thing that was bothering me too, as I was thinking about it, is we have a lot of people in our community, the prepper, news awareness, international event awareness community, that I see that make a lot of comments that basically, if you boil it down, is like, I've got mine, so I'm good. Gas is $3.50 in my area, so I'm good. I can afford that. Well, that's great, but your neighbors, your fellow countrymen in another part of the country, or your neighbors up north, are paying $4 to $5 a gallon, and they're hurting. And whether you're from the United States or from Canada or Mexico, we're pretty much tied together economically. Tariffs or no tariffs, or whether you like it or not, we're all Americans on the same continent. Their pain is your pain, whether you realize it or not. Hampered economic activity in Texas should bother someone from Seattle or Charlotte, North Carolina, or Bangor, Maine, or Wisconsin. We should not be so selfish. Want what's good for your fellow American. And even though you got yours, fight and be a voice for those that are under pain. That's what's ethical. That's what's moral. Right now, our country is being sold out from under our feet, and a lot don't realize it. A lot of folks somehow are convinced this is winning. I'm not surprised you can't share this, Hoppison. Good to see you anyway. Good to see you here. all of us are deserving of the promises of our forefathers, and we've let it slip. And the world's not going to be the same going forward. We are living through, and this is another thought that I had, and to anybody coming in, these are epiphanies that were induced by the highway, a sort of highway hypnosis epiphany. Different thoughts, really trying to deeply think while taking in the landscape and getting the miles underneath the wheels. Just things I was thinking about during my road trip while I had quite a bit of distance to cover. How do you fix all this? Just be honest, ethical, moral. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Give people around you the freedom to live and voice their opinion. But more than anything, be supportive of people that are fleshing it out. Going back to the saying of easier to fool someone than it is to convince them they've been fooled. People will get there. I have faith in my fellow man, I really do. I have faith in my fellow Americans. I have faith in my fellow North Americans. And I have faith in other cultures around the world. They're figuring it out. Believe you me. There's parts of the world that are figuring out it's better to have the United States as an enemy rather than a friend. I think that was something Henry Kissinger touched on or said or quoted or something like that. Not that he was not a dirtbag, but basically, who needs enemies when the United States is your friend? That was during the Vietnam era. Cold War era. And some of that's true. We've done some dirty deeds as a country, and erasing that from history is not going to help your thought process. And as non-macho as it sounds, sometimes you don't need to be flexing your military might in areas of the world where it's not, you have no reason to do so. Because the repercussions of reality hitting the ground is very, very different than the oxygen you can artificially pump into a narrative and keep people fooled. You hear the saying every now and then of, well, this is the only president that had the balls to do that. No, there was previous presidents that would have had no problem doing it. Thankfully, themselves or the people around them were smart enough to know, hey, if you do this, the U.S. military is not a magic wand, and I really, really abhor an egomaniac waving it like a magic wand, because there's lives in that stick. It wasn't necessary. It was for the wrong reasons. And now the world's reshuffled in a way that's not in our favor. The world's reshuffled quicker in a way that is now going to harm me, my family, my neighbors to the north, my neighbors to the south. It's going to harm all kinds of people. My friends in Europe. somehow, got to get a handle on this, because there's been a lot of really nice luxury bunkers built, some in other countries, that they're not giving the plane tickets or the coordinates to get there to us, in case it all goes south. Remember, privatize gains and socialize losses. Well, when the socialized loss is military fallout, that gets ugly real quick. You don't need me to tell you that. That gets super ugly real quick. Yeah, Ramjet, you got the quote. I don't know if that was Kissinger or not, or if it was somebody else. It's dangerous to be an enemy of the United States, but it's fatal to be a friend. Yeah. There's evidence to that. That quote didn't come out of nowhere. So we got problems, plenty. Solutions? None of us can flip a lever or flip a switch and fix it all. It's going to be generational. And if this country is going to make it another 250 years, we have to start with ourselves and with our kids. And start laying down that you're going to have to help some strangers. Because you're going to reach a point in time where those strangers are going to be able to help you. And by strangers, I mean, it might be neighbors in your immediate community. It might be someone from another state. It might be a different state altogether, or a state organization. We're going to see in time a restructuring that many alive don't recognize. It's here, guys. How do you think the Weimar Germans felt 10 years before Weimar Germany? We've already had our 10 years previous. It's been 6 years since the money printer go burr. And the duct tape, the masks, it's starting to slip. And that's why you got cats like Peter Thiel bugging out to Argentina. He's probably a little bit early. But we're going to have to look out for each other. And me personally, I really don't care how you voted. I've decided if you need help, if you need my help, I'm going to give you my help. If you're an American, I'm going to give you my help. If you're Canadian, if you're Mexican, if the country's in turmoil and upheaval and you need my help, I'm going to give it to you the best I can. Because I'm going to find myself in Eastern Europe in 3 months. And as many of you know, it's not looking real pretty over there either. And I could very well get caught over there because I will be in Moldova. And I might need some people's help. depending on how, the timing around that trip, on how things go down and the particular work that I have to do and the area I'm going to be in. I might need some help. Hopefully not, but you never know. So, would be foolish for me not to offer in the reverse, or at least prep my mind to be able to offer in the reverse. So that's the order. Help, be willing to help, and support your fellow man. I don't care what country they come from. I don't care what party they believed in previous. Be willing to be of service to your fellow man. That's what's going to fix all this. Hear people out. I mean, people love to argue. People love to talk nonsense, and that's what most of it is. It's really nonsense. But help people cut through it. Just be an example. Just be a good example of a human. Don't call people that aren't really terrorists, terrorists. That falls in that same folder of behavior. Don't allow other people to give you labels that you then label other people or other places, because you're just deluding and confusing yourself. And a lot of the calls for blood of other people in your name, using weapons that your tax dollars paid for, no. And am I saying everybody needs to be Shangri-La and, kumbaya, and hold hands around the fire? No. There's going to be some head knocking that needs to be done. There's no doubt about that. There's always someone that's out of pocket. But think it through. If you're handed the pom-pom and you're handed the flag and you're saying you need to wave this or you're not a real American, you need to take a good long look at the person that's ordering you to do that. Because it's easier to fool someone than convince themselves that they've been fooled. Convince them that they've been fooled. Very true. All right. I don't want to be Debbie Downer all night. So I'm going to put some music back on. I'm going to take a short break, and we're going to look at some vacation pics together. We're going to look at some beauty together and leave some of this ugliness behind, because you'll have the rest of the week to be worried about ugliness, because that'll get thrown in your face no matter what. What do we got here? We've got Russian strategic assets airborne. Great. Yeah, it's going to be a rough week, guys. This right here told me the story. Sunday afternoon, NA unmarked aircraft operating only on Mode S takes off out of Spirit of St. Louis Airport, goes straight to Tinker, and then I think we had E4B move back to Andrews earlier in the day. And legally, there ain't shit that we can really do over here, but shit's going to happen anyway. It's all going to fire back up because you're not starving to death quick enough. Sorry to say that, but that's what it seems like. So we're going to look at some beauty together for a while. And thankfully, the EAMs have been pretty much calm, at least on the U.S. side. Yeah, I think a lot of things are intentional. There's a saying in my industry is you don't necessarily need You don't assign malice where incompetence will do. And a lot of this is just straight up incompetence. We got the wrong people in there because no one good wants to go through the BS, the absolute never-ending miring BS to get into a public office. Good people are scared away from that, as you know, all we have left is psychopaths and narcissists that want to be in there. Old game show hosts. Well, I'm sorry, you can't run one of the most powerful countries in the world if your background is flamboyant / failed businessman and game show host. That doesn't make for a good executive. I hate to be that blunt about it. And I've said before on my channel, I would much rather pluck a corn farmer from the middle of Nebraska and put him in the Oval Office. He's going to do a better job than what these shysters are doing, because it's all grift and corruption. When they get up there, at least there's half a chance where that corn farmer will be like, you know what, I wouldn't run my farm this way, so I'm not going to run the country this way. So, talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to take a quick break here, let my voice recover, probably get another beer because it's still hot. And then we'll look at some pitches.
Echo, Echo, Bravo, Uniform, Delta, Foxtrot, stand by. Echo, Echo, Bravo, Uniform, Delta, Foxtrot, stand by. Message follows. Echo, Echo, Bravo, Uniform, Delta, Foxtrot, Tango, Uniform. Whiskey, Quebec, Charlie, Quebec, Bravo, Charlie, Sierra, I say again, Echo, Echo, Bravo, Uniform, Delta, Foxtrot, Tango, Uniform, Kilo, 2, 5, Mike, Sierra, Sierra, Delta, Whiskey, Quebec, Charlie, Quebec, Bravo, Charlie, Sierra. This is Gunrack, out.
Yeah, that was the first EAM in quite some time. Like I said, there was a tactical earlier, but pardon me. I just cleared my throat directly into the mic. I apologize. I apologize for that. You guys don't deserve that. All right. What we're going to do, we're going to nerd out with SoIL here is what we're going to do. Let you guys in on some of the things I like to follow that are not current events, politics, stuff like that. So the tag on the video is going to be a little bit misleading. It's news and politics, but we're going to talk about, or at least I'm going to talk at you about some of my aside interests that have nothing to do with death and destruction, politics, reds and blues, and all that. Put a 1 in the chat if you've ever heard of any of the following people or places or things, ideas. Put it that way. Have you ever heard of a time period called the Younger Dryas? 12,600 years ago. Ancient flood hypothesis or theory. Not necessarily biblical, but it can tie into some biblical stories and stuff like that. But evidence of ancient catastrophe being a large space body or meteor strike, melting glaciers. Have you ever heard of the work of Randall Carlson? Randall Carlson is one of my favorite alternative, he's not a professor or a doctor, but purveyor of ancient history, history that was not taught in school, hidden history. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast. He's been on with Sean Ryan. I'm sure he's been on several others, but Randall Carlson is a favorite personality of mine. Graham Hancock is too. Dr. Robert Schoch is a favorite personality of mine. I follow a lot of his work. He deals with a lot of ancient Egyptology, tying together. He has a slightly different take on, theories of the past. I'll tell you what, I'll minimize the SDR, and we'll see what happens. But Dr. Robert Schoch, he is pretty much in the camp that there were civilizations before the ancient Egypts. The Sphinx is much, much older than what current Egyptology allows for and integrates into their study of Egyptology. And he's done a lot of ground and geology, because he's a geologist by trade, on the erosion around the Sphinx. And tribulation and all that talk is great if you can find somebody else in the chat to banter about with it. I personally don't really put much stock into that those kind of magical beliefs, but he is Lord. You're welcome to your opinion. Just I'm sensitive to the street preaching, so try not to stand on your bucket for too long with that, because I do find it to be nonsensical. Because I can't get anybody to take me up on tribulation insurance. Your pets don't have souls; they're going to be left behind. What are you going to do with Fluffy? I tried to put together a huge team of friendly atheists to take care of pets, and I couldn't get anyone that believes in the tribulation to buy into that. It was going to be 7 or 8 easy payments of like $5.99.99, and we'll look. Those of us that are left behind will look after your pets after the rapture, after you defy physics and float up into the sky. Nobody will buy it. So either you don't believe in the tribulation, you don't believe in the rapture, or you don't give a damn about Fluffy, big-eyed, sparkly-eyed, Fluffy or woofers. Cruel. Anyway. And I probably just ignited a whole firestorm in the chat. Oh, the tribulation. Whatever. Anyway. So anyway, Robert Schoch and Randall Carlson. So one of the things I wanted to make sure to see if I was going to be in Northwest Washington was the Scablands, which Randall Carlson includes quite a bit in his lectures and different discussions about the ancient flood theory from the Younger Dryas. And it's a very interesting place because to me it seems that the topography and the geology is very much out of place in that area. You have a huge area of, basically alpine-like conditions, mountains, stuff like that. And it reminded me a lot when I went through the Scablands, which I'll show you here in the slideshow in a little bit, of like almost Nevada, Arizona, areas in the desert, not necessarily the high desert, but it was very out of place, and it does lend credence to something that might have happened there 12,000 years ago. And if you're interested, I would encourage you, if this stuff does strike your interest, just trying to figure out what happened all those years and years ago. those are the guys that I would get started with. That would be the good three to dip your toe into. Is Randall Carlson, Graham Hancock, and Dr. Robert Schoch. That's a good starter pack right there for ancient theory and seeing how some of these ancient stories might have come about. You know, because geologic time does not line up with a lot of our legend time, you know, as far as Western accepted religions and stuff like that. It kind of does with the East and kind of does with some of the Native Americans and things like that. But, you know, is there a possibility that there was civilizations on Earth before the last ice age, and the there was a sequence of events that triggered an ice age every so many thousands of years on Earth that would erase those previous civilizations and things like that? And simple thought experiments like, why does Africa have, Africa and parts of Asia have large land mammals still, descendants of large land mammals like rhinoceros and elephants, and the closest thing that we kept in North America was bison and a buffalo. But North America at one point in time was chock full of these giant mammals. And if you run the math and run the numbers, human population, like the going theory now is the human population hunted them to extinction, blah, blah, blah. Math doesn't really math there. So anyway, I'll quit babbling and start walking you through the pictures here. Oh, and I'm reading through the comments. Tracy, I'm sorry if I made you mad, but that's how I feel. I'm not a big believer in a lot of that, the religious legends and stuff like that. So find me however many potatoes you want to find me, but if you want to believe it, great. If that brings you comfort to hold on to that belief, then great. But me personally, I don't see it. All right, so this was my first overnight stop to stay. And my wife did a great job at picking out places to stay, as she usually does. It's hard to find rural. I don't like to stay in towns if I can help it, or cities and stuff like that. But she does a great job at finding properties for me to stay. And this was, let's see, probably have to have somewhat of a guide here. So this was just outside Kettle Falls in Washington State. Yeah, if the slideshow cooperates here. So this was the backyard, basically where this Airbnb was in Kettle Falls. Whoop, let me slow this thing down, because now I'm already passing it up. But it had a little waterfall, and it was part of a power plant project integrated into the falls there. And maybe I'll show some pictures of the house later, but I wanted to get over to the Scablands as quick as I could, and that's Dry Falls, Washington area. I think it's Dry Falls State Park is what they call it. And these are just from my phone, just pictures I snapped. I think this was just getting into... This isn't Dry Falls yet, I don't believe. This was someplace around here is Dry Falls and the Scablands. And this is a giant area where the Columbia River was just, or the old course of the Columbia River was just ripped open by some evidence of massive flooding. There's a lot of boulders, stray boulders and stuff like that in areas that don't really correspond to the surrounding area. So This is Northwest Washington, and it looks very Nevada-like to me. And this is all what's called the scablands that Randall Carlson talks about. And that's a panoramic there. There's some of the boulders that just out of nowhere, they're just on the ground. You know, like it takes a lot of slurry and mud. Don't know if the pictures do it justice of the scale, but it's a huge scale. So HBH, if you grew up in Central Washington, maybe you've been out to this area. Yeah, it's kind of like the Badlands. It seems arid, but it's not, because the Columbia River is really not that far away. This is like where it would have washed out from the banks of the Columbia. There's a crow doing a barrel roll. I was just magically able to catch that. That's on the Columbia River, still in the Dry Falls area. But those buttes and steps, you know, it's just very out of place for the rest of the countryside. Did a lot of thinking along those open stretches of highway where quite a few parts didn't have a lot of cell service. And this is the dam at, let's see. So I kind of mark in my mind where I was. That's, let's see, I think that was at the south end. Where was that, Mamma Jamma? So I was over here in Colville Restoration. That's the Grand Coulee and the Coulee Dam, that area, to get yourself oriented. There again, you know, miles and miles away, still in the scablands. Those giant boulders were popping out of the landscape. Now we're getting into back into what I would consider normal. There was supper one night. That's before I got my hands on. No, I think I had some Rainer. I had to finish off a Coors that I had I had acquired, some Coors for the evening. But we had some New York strip steaks, salt and peppered up, and some brats, and just grilled them bad boys and ate like a king on the road. I don't think I had any, which I almost never do anyway. I don't think I had any fast food on this trip. I either made dinner, you know, or had leftovers at Airbnb, or sat down at a diner or something like that. Fast food's bad for you. Skip it when you can. Make real food. So this still is Northwest Washington. So you can see how out of, you know, that's what most of the state on the east looks like. Compare that to the scablands. That's very alpine-like. Here I'm in British Columbia now in Canada. Crossed over at Salmo, Ramjet, if you know where Salmo's at. And we found this Wish Garden. I don't know if it'll let me go back. But this was on the road on 3. I can't remember if it was 3 or 3B outside of Salmo, where just people have come for years and you know, I think some people call it a fairy garden or a wish garden, whatever you want to call it. But couples or families driving through, they just write their names on a rock and leave it. And so all these rocks were either painted or had people's names or messages for other people. It was kind of a cool little place just along the road. It was kind of half flooded out, so we didn't get to really tromp around in it too much. But, you know, just a lot of good vibes, man. A lot of good vibes in that area. Just people well wishing for each other, saying they were here and they were having a good time. The Ramjet, you're saying you know where Salmo is. You're saying ooh, so I guess you know where Salmo is. A little town. Cute little town. Very relaxing to drive, for me anyway, in that environment. It's very relaxing for me to drive. God, I love alpine landscapes. And here we had to stop. Let's see, this was Bigfoot Cafe and Gift Shop. And, let's see. Okay, I was out of there, and I was up here. And I want to say... What little town was this? You can probably Google search the Bigfoot Cafe and figure out what town I was, but this was still in BC. Bigfoot Cafe. It was the only place I found Canada kind of odd. Everything, and I had heard this story before I went up there, ever since the Toronto protests and stuff like that, that, you know, they're trying to phase out cash. This was the only place that I could convince the owners to take U.S. dollars. Apparently there's a little bit of a black market for both Canadian cash and U.S. dollars. I found it very odd that even like a local car, like a little town with a car wash, the change machines were all out of order. Like you couldn't put a Canadian dollar or, you know, a 5 or a 10 and get coins out. Their card stuff was everywhere. So whenever I stop at these small businesses, you know, no matter where I'm at, it's like, hey, does cash help you more? Does a card help you more? What is best for your business, best for your situation? And this was the only place while I was in Canada that was like, yeah, we'll take U.S. dollars. Yeah, we'll take them. Because the U.S. dollar is stronger than the Canadian dollar right now by like 40% or some crazy number. And I gave them a huge tip. They're super nice people. I think they had some Swedish or some kind of Viking background because there was like runes over doors and unique little place, but very friendly, decent food. Deep behind enemy lines in Canuckistan with them crazy Canucks. But British Columbia is just beautiful. Clouds in the mountains. I don't know, can I slow this thing down? It seems like this is going super fast. I know what I need to do. Let's do that. Let's give it a transition. Okay, now I'm in Alberta. And that was a very stark change. That reminded me very much of the Dakotas and the flatlands out in Alberta. And there's some locations that I can't show you guys, but this was on the way to one of them. And this was a very interesting spot that I stopped at. Going back to historical accounts and historical areas, this head smashed in Buffalo Jump. It's a World Heritage Site, but it's basically a site that the Indians, the Native Americans in that part of Alberta, would use to hunt. And they did this practice for thousands and thousands of years, where they basically would find these blind cliffs, and the braves would develop different techniques to run the buffalo off the cliff, so the fall would kill them. And very effective mass way of getting a lot of protein, because you needed to make a lot of pemmican to survive the harsh winters up there, obviously. So, but what I found very interesting, I toured the whole site. I think I didn't do the little trail up top because the females I was with were a little bit traveled out. They didn't have enough energy, but definitely toured the site and the museum and everything. The only thing I didn't do was the hike at the top to actually see the real buffalo jump, but I got the gist of it. But what I found interesting, which is the next slide, the next picture, and also there was a 1,000-year gap when that site wasn't used. So there was all types of geological, archaeological evidence of thousands and thousands of years where, primitive tribes were using that site for that particular way of hunting, and then it was just abandoned for 1,000 years. So I made a mental note of that, and I wanted to check a little bit further into that, and then also this was a way of record keeping every winter, and this was done on a buffalo hide, and each icon from the very center on out, I think it was clockwise. I've got pictures of the other descriptions. But basically, it was like a high point of the year between winters, and some of the icon, if I can say that word right, icon-free icons here are explained. Some of them weren't really well explained. It's like this was apparently a smallpox scare. This right here. What the heck is this thingy? Was the tribe attacked by octopi or, an octopi? What in the world's going on there? What is this guy here? I got to rotate. I got to try and decipher this as a little challenge I lined up for myself. So I want to do that. Kind of figure out what some of these are, because I've found that I'm drawn to Native American rock art and the kind of icons and stuff like that. And it sounds a little wooey. It sounds a little woo-wooey, but I've been on road trips where I've pulled off the road and it was an area I couldn't really go into. I didn't want to, get a trespass charge or whatever, but I was drawn to a certain site, and I've gone back and done the research, why did I feel that way at that certain point? And it's almost always there was some ancient rock art, and I find myself bumping into, even on tours and different travels where I don't intend to, I'll be drawn or somehow find myself next to ancient Native American rock art a lot of times. And I can't explain that. That's always kind of been an enigma. It's like I can feel, and this sounds wooey, I know it does, but I feel myself drawn to these sites where primitive man have put down some kind of record. I don't know why. There's a place in Utah, and I'll see if I can find the picture where that happened. And it's like, well, just driving along an empty highway. I believe it was Utah State Highway 10. And I just had to stop. And it was in this area where there was these gentle, sandstone, type of low hills, sandstone formations poking up out of the sand. And it's like, man, there's just something about this area. And it turned out to be right across the hill. If I would have jumped the fence and walked in there, and left everybody I was with at the time, which I couldn't have done anyway, but walked a half mile in, on this trail, I would have been face to face with like this really enigmatic and mysterious, unexplained rock art that's been there for thousands of years. I'm kind of glancing at chat too. Maria, MCEN Media, Maria. I'm glad you're having a great Sunday and high as a kite. But we're not talking about news. This is my trip. I've just been on a long road trip, both business and pleasure, through Northeast Washington, Southern British Columbia, Southern Alberta, and then I came back down in, and I was lucky enough to go to and hike in Glacier National Park, and then went through the Panhandle of Idaho and back into Spokane and flew out of Spokane. So I had a slight business, some minor business to take care of while I was out there, and mostly turned it into like a vacation road trip type thing. So that's what I'm talking about. This is the pictures from my phone, selected out for OPSEC, my personal OPSEC, and the people that were with me, my family. So, yes, perhaps. Who knows? Charlotte Williams, are you okay, Charlotte? Yeah. Take care of your neighbors. You're going to bump into neighbors and they're going to be high as a fucking kite, man. Take them by the hand, or, take a shroom and go in with them, baby. Just take care of the people around you. Yeah, I'm done with news. I did my news and current events and deep thoughts roundup earlier in the live stream, and I'm done talking about that. Now we're talking about ancient flood theory and ancient Plains Indians and stuff like that. So I'm not going to be. You're going to have all week to get doom and gloomed because the whole cycle restarted. But anyway, here we are, currently paused on a slide in Alberta. I personally don't do a lot of. I have never done any psychedelics. I was very, very tempted. I went to Peru years ago. I was somewhat tempted to sign on to an ayahuasca trip. It did kind of speak to me, but to do it properly, there's a lot of really shady places. Hang on, I got a joker out here. Somebody put ayahuasca in the chat to remind me when I get back here. I just had someone pull up at the compound gate. Give me 1 second. I'm not expecting anyone, so hopefully I'll make it back. Un momento. Ein momento. Okay. That was an easy fix. Just some kids wanting to find a spot to get laid. Do a little car loving. But they picked the wrong random lane road. So hopefully for that dude, she's still in the mood. Anyway. What was I talking about? Ayahuasca. So, been to Peru. Tempted to do, but I like classic things. I like real Oreo cookies. I'm sorry. Let me back up. I like Hydrox cookies, which was the Oreo before the Oreo. I like real Coca-Cola. I like real things. Okay. So if I'm going to do an ayahuasca trip, I want to do the real ancient way it was done, not the current pop culture way where you dose yourself into oblivion and you might have a nightmare and see different things. I want to do the real deal. So when I was in Peru on the Amazon, I made sure to carve out time to actually talk to a genuine Amazonian shaman who may surprise some people. All can be male or female. And some of the best ones, some of the best guides, ayahuasca guides, are female priestesses of that particular practice in the Amazon. And I talked with her with the aid of a translator because she didn't speak much Spanish at all, which I would have probably been able to manage somewhat. But she spoke a local South American Indian dialect, and was not really well versed in Spanish. But anyway, through a translator, worked out that the real ancient way of doing it is actually a 2-week long, half a moon, 2-week long affair. And one of the main reasons it's that long is your first week is initiation to elevation, and what they're really doing is what any proper guide would do is make sure you're going to live through the event. They're going to take you hiking through the Amazon. They're going to evaluate your physical stamina. They're going to basically do what a modern sports doctor would do before you do an event that's going to stress your body in order to exercise your mind. And I didn't have 2 weeks. I could pay the $2,000 or whatever and go to some of these shysters that operate down there, which are basically hippies that moved from California and started an ayahuasca, farm. There's a vine. It's 2 vines. It's the vine of life and like the vine of death, and they combine the two in order to make ayahuasca. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted a genuine guide if I was going to do it. And she let me know that it's like, hey, you need to carve aside like 2 weeks to basically live with me in the Amazon, minimum. And it's like, well, El Chico, I don't have that much time, so I'm going to have to pass at this point. And maybe sometime in the future. But it was a very interesting experience. Just the day that I had spent with her. And she actually surprised me. She made me a bracelet that was a symbol for wisdom, because I was the first Westerner that she met that was, willing to discover, or her grandfather had taught her basically the trade of being the medicine woman for this tribe in the Peruvian Amazon. And it was the first time that she had heard of or met a Western man coming down to explore the possibility of undergoing the ayahuasca journey in the proper way. And she was certainly aware of many people that were doing the pop culture way, which there was, I guess, a plantation or facility a little bit upriver that she was aware of, that they do it all day long, night and day. And she said the screams that come out of that place, the screams of terror, that's not what it's about. It's not about, giving you a 50-50 coin toss, whether you're going to have a bad trip or a good trip. It's about self-discovery and nature and learning that Mother Earth has a tone all to its own, and a lot of this other, woo-woo stuff that's supposedly good for the soul. But it takes 2 weeks to do the genuine ancient tradition way. So maybe in the future sometime. I just didn't have more than a day lined out to talk to her, but now I know. Okay, so that's my ayahuasca story. Kind of like almost joining the military, but I didn't. Almost did ayahuasca, but I didn't at the last minute because the priestess kind of freaked me out. But anyway, she at the end of the day, I was saying she surprised me during our travels. She was constantly working with her hands, doing stuff, and I just figured that's medicine woman, witch doctor type stuff from that area. She actually made me a very nice bracelet out of local fibers and like cocoa beans and some other stuff, and dyed it and painted it the night that I was sleeping there. And eventually it's just to enshroud the idea of wisdom. So I came across to her as a wise old soul or whatever, and she was inspired to make that piece of Native American, South American jewelry, Peruvian jewelry for me specifically. And I still wear it out from time to time. It's very simple, but it was a nice gift. All right, moving on from my almost ayahuasca trip that no one really cares about. Here we are. Now we're coming back into Montana. Now we're in Blackfeet country. Coming back down into St. Mary's. We came into Glacier National Park from the east, which is a little town of St. Mary, and they have a ranger's check-in station there. That's one of the gates to get in the park, and it was absolutely beautiful. That's St. Mary's Lake, and I did the St. Mary's Falls Trail. A lot of trails were closed because of bear activity. Uh-oh. Oh, yeah. I removed one file because this doofody. Let me stop it here. I went through real quick and edited some of the pictures in that file that was removed. Everybody warned me, whether I was talking to people in Alberta or British Columbia, the bears, you're going to get eaten by a bear. You're going to get mauled by a bear. Well, you do a little bit of research about Glacier National Park. It's like, yeah, you do have a lot of bear encounters, and there was an incident in 1967 that they called the Night of the Grizzlies, where grizzly bears went into very busy campgrounds and ate a bunch of people. I think they actually killed 2 and mauled a bunch of people. But yes, you are more than likely to have an encounter or see a black bear or a grizzly bear if you're tromping around Glacier National Park. But the number one thing is not bear attacks that gets you in Glacier. I did my research. The number one thing that kills the most people, and it got a park ranger the week I was there last week. You can find this in the current news. Is actually drowning is number one, because everything, including the lakes, even in the summertime, is glacial melt in Glacier National Park. So that means the water is extremely cold. So if you are unprepared and you fall in one of these fast-moving glacial melt streams, your body is going to lock up in seconds. And it does not matter how strong of a swimmer you are if you're in hypothermic shock. in almost freezing water that's fast moving, you're goner. You're done for. Yeah, moose is dangerous during the rut season in the fall. But drowning was the number one cause of death for visitors. Falls, and the reason I removed that picture was because some doofody, I was getting ready to take a landscape picture from very near a cliff edge, and this dude the car came to a screeching halt, and he bounded down the trail to where I was, not far from me, and I thought he was like a jumper. I thought he was going to go over the edge, but he stopped at the last minute in the loose gravel right before about, I don't know, 250, 300 foot drop off, into rocks below and then the lake. But since he was in that picture, I have no idea who he was, just some idiot that jumped out of a car and ran down the trail behind me. I really did think he was going to leap to his death right there. So since he was in the picture, I edited that out. It got into the original mix. But yeah, glacier is beautiful. And the other most common cause of death is falls. Just what that dumbass was getting ready to do to himself. Because there are some sheer cliffs along the trails and stuff. Yeah, the mesas can be dangerous. But St. Mary's Trail was absolutely beautiful. And these little bastards, these little western chipmunks, whatever they were, they are everywhere. And they must get fed by hikers, because they will come right up to you and pounce on your shoe, and little begging critters. They're cute as heck, though. I think that's an eastern squirrel. Somebody could correct me, and maybe it's some kind of, or a western squirrel. It might be a western chipmunk of some kind, but they were all over that little trail. Cute little bastards, but don't feed them. You don't feed the animals in the park. You take away from their natural ability to provide for themselves, and that's not good for them. But they almost worked their magic. Their little beady eyes, little begging bastards. They almost won the females that I was with over. And yeah, I'm sure they get fed by hikers, because some of them were even posing. They'd run out to a tall rock right next to you and stand up straight and look right at you, within grabbing distance, and they're like, "That's not natural." It's where I'm from and further south. That's a good way to end up between two buns with some kind of sauce on you. But they were cute. And the air there was so oxygen rich and sweet from what I gather, the ponderosa pines and all the different alpine flowers, which there's a run of pictures here coming up, were all in bloom. And you step out on the trail and just start walking, and it was not overpowering like sickly sweet or anything like that, but it was just beautiful. It just added to all your other senses. There was a pack of lunch meat there that was hanging around the trail. One of the falls from the glacial melts. That's across St. Mary's Lake there on the trail. I've always wanted to go there my whole life, and when I got there, I realized why. It's just absolutely beautiful. And I can't wait to go back. I did see both ends of the park. I did drive down the Going of the Sun Road, but right now it was closed in the middle. And like I said, a lot of trails were closed from bear activity, but I guess it wasn't fully thawed out. So they had the very center section of the park, Going in the Sun Road, closed off. So I drove south around the park and then went back in through the west gate on the west side. Little tour boat there. And until that boat got out there, that surface of that lake was like a mirror. You could see very plainly the reflection of all the mountains and everything in the distance. I think this is this still the east side of the park on the trail? This might be the west side. Driving down south to Glacier National Park, and I think I stopped and took a couple photos. Oh yeah, this was on the west side. Dude had a Unimog just napping in the parking lot. It was awesome. Ultimate trail vehicle. And there's a bear we saw. A little juvenile grizzly. A lot of bear activity in the park this time of year. And that's what separated us from the grizzly. Even though if he wanted to swim across, he could have. But probably a little bit too cold for the guy just coming out of hibernation. And this is the Tobacco River. This is out of Glacier National Park, but this was one of my next stopovers. I was here for 2 nights, and this was the backyard there. And even had a chance. A business was concluded, and I was just on my own personal time after that. So I actually went into town and purchased a rod and reel and a couple lures and tried my hand at salmon, and I ended up breaking that freaking $99 spincaster rod on the biggest rainbow trout I ever saw, and there was no witnesses, and I screamed like a little girl when it broke the damn rod, and I had a little hunk of fish lip and hurt pride to show for it. But the Montana fishing record for rainbow trout is like 30 pounds. And I don't know what spawn of Godzilla and trout this was, but it broke that rod. It broke it right where you join, slip the 2 pieces together. Just snapped it. And when he broke water and I went to set the hook, he swung his head one way, and I jerked the other way to set the hook, and all I did get from him was a little bit of lip, and got to see him. And I know I screamed like a little girl, losing that fish. Oh my gosh! But that's that's part of the Tobacco River in Montana, and that's my Montana. Monster fish that got away story. Right down in that little eddy pool right here. Let me back up one. It was the current so strong from this glacial melt. The current was coming this way, and it was right here in this little pool that I snagged that monster, and he spit the bait. He spit the lure back out at me and said, "You ain't getting none, son." And I cried. Not really, but you know what I mean. If you've fished, you know what I mean. But that rainbow trout had to be every bit of 30 pounds. It was probably as long as my forearm and a half. And it was like putting a hook in the Loch Ness Monster. I couldn't believe it until it was all over. But current was real strong, so it's like, you work these little eddies and little back tides or whatever they're called, where it's a little bit calmer, where the fish don't have to struggle, and there's just weeds just under the water surface there. It's probably 2-3 feet deep, and they make their way up, up against the current, and they rest in these areas. And I threw just a regular old spoon lure out there. Dude sold me lures that worked, that's for sure. But man, when it broke that rod, I was like, what? Because we had it strung for 30-pound line, and it didn't break the line. I did get a little hunk of them back, but it broke that rod in half when I went to set the hook. So, wish I had more evidence. You'll just have to believe me. And after I broke the rod, I ended up playing radio on the local VHF repeaters there. But this is the back of the property where I stayed along the Tobacco River there. And this is in the Kootenai. Officially, it's in the Kootenai area of Montana, Kootenai National Forest. Absolutely beautiful. And this was the night, if you guys recall, they talked about like there was a severe, we were supposed to have, Aurora Borealis, Northern Lights, real strong over the last weekend that just passed, Friday, Saturday, which ended up not happening. But I was out watching for it anyway, since I was in, northern latitudes. It's like, man, I'm gonna have a trifecta here. Seen a grizzly bear, broke my fishing reel, got my monster fish story, and so I kind of waited up for it to get dark, which it gets dark late, even in early summer. It was like 11 o'clock. Twilight seemed like it took 2 hours because the sun stays up so much longer in those northern latitudes in the summer. But this is the conjunction of Mercury, it's a real faint one here, and Jupiter and Venus. So I did catch that in the night sky. But I think the Northern Lights was a fizzle. Either the polarity was wrong, or it didn't hit us in the way they thought, or hit us during daylight hours after. I'm not sure what happened there. I didn't see any Northern Lights, and I think this was Idaho on the drive back along the. I think this is Idaho. Yeah, and this is a start. So that's the vacay pics. That's the vacay pics. It was nice. And I didn't think about current events or politics or any of that shit. Except when I was driving, I was thinking about like social order and the way of the world, and how to relate with my fellow humans that are caught up in all this stuff, and trying to figure out how to talk to people if I'm going to have a channel like this. It's, crew, honestly, from my heart to yours, I hope to curate a following of just good people that are not out, aren't ideological warriors of any stripe and just want what's best for their fellow man. I'm hoping to curate a following in that stripe. And if you're Christian, great. If you're Muslim, great. If you're Republican, great. If you're Democratic, if you're nothing, I don't really care what other stripes you might carry or assign to yourself. But if you're in this channel and you're listening to my voice and you want to be a part of this community, I'm really hoping to foster people that just want what's best for one another and what's best for their neighbors, both at home and around the world, and enjoy the beauty, are naturally curious about how things work, try to find answers for each other, and just foster a good community. That's what I want out of this channel. And if I can get there with your help, awesome. I'm really conflicted about turning on any monetization, because I know a lot of YouTube algorithm is that way, where people make a living doing YouTube stuff. I don't need to do that, guys. I really don't, crew. I mean, would it help? Sure. You know, would it help me buy cool stuff for the channel if you guys sent me money? Sure. But on the other hand, money is a corrupting thing. You know, would I be tempted because such and such person who I know donated X amount of dollars wants to talk about X, Y, or Z on a particular night? I'd have a hard, you know, do they kind of have a right to purchase it? You see what I'm saying? That can be very conflicting ethically. It's like, yeah, that person invested in my channel and they want to see something. They want to see X, Y, or Z, or they want to talk about A, B, or C. So that's tough. You know, the channel's not for sale. It's my channel, and I don't really want to monetize it in a lot of ways. I don't want to. I'm not going to sell you guys anything. I don't have anything to sell you. Product wise, you know, am I going to make SoIL merch shirts? No, that's gay. You guys really want to stroll into your local Safeway wearing a SoIL Rocks, you know, whatever. That's not the style. I just want a community of people that can come together no matter what stripe and find solutions for each other. That's all I want. I'm not looking at spending nights calling a certain subset of people dumbasses and this, that, or the other. I think some of you that have been kind of with me from the beginning know the trajectory of the channel, and it's just, let's just try to make sense of the world together. Yeah, do you want to wear a soiled shirt? Walking into the HB or the Safeway or the Walmart or whatever. I mean, no one's gonna know what that means. You know. Merch for a channel. I mean, I kind of find that idea ridiculous. I mean, even if you've got tens of thousands of followers, it's like, okay, would I rather sell you a T-shirt? Okay, let's say the channel's monetized or whatever. Here's what I'd really like to get into to be able to do. Where I'm at in the country is an excellent sky watching place because it's naturally dark. There's not a lot of big city light pollution and stuff like that. And I'm kind of at a weird crossroads of aircraft and other traffic. What I'd love to do if the channel ends up being monetized and you guys, you know, I set up super chats or whatever, is just dump that back into cool gear to display visually while I'm doing these live streams, like a telescope, you know, a shareable telescope, so to speak, is one thing I've been keeping an eye on. Other is to do maybe some satellite radio work. But it's kind of hard OPSEC wise, but I mean, I could at least show you some, you know, radio stuff. So, but you guys in the comments, you know, you can kind of steer the channel too. I kind of know what I want to do with it. I don't want to do current events and politics all the time. I don't, you know, I've never had a desire to have a 24/7 breaking news live stream because, quite honestly, I think you guys need breaks. You need to take breaks from this doom and gloom stuff. Soiled myself T-shirt today. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. That's a funny tagline. But would you really want to wear a T-shirt into a public place with something like that on it? It's a cute idea. It's a witty idea, but yeah, I personally I just can't see myself ordering, you know, merch stuff and then reselling to you guys at a premium. I'd rather just be able to visually display cool stuff to you, you know, stuff like that. So, I don't know, you guys tell me. Change this over to a better picture in the slideshow here. But you guys know what I'm saying. You know, do I really want to do the typical YouTube monetization? I just don't have the heart for it to do that to you guys. You know, I hope that makes sense. I'm surprised it won't let me go all the way back from the beginning. Just all right. Yep. If any nuclear disaster happened, we were completely blind to it because the Kiwi timed out. So if it's been back-to-back EAM, sorry, no one knows. No one cares. Oh, this is Europe. But yeah, I'd like to set up a telescope on top of the workshop here, on top of the station, and just go stargazing with you guys at night. And if we got cool aircraft flying through at the same time, we'll do that. You like looking at Flight Radar 24, Charlotte? Yeah, Flight Radar is cool, but there again, the only thing that's transmitting those messages is stuff that they want you to see, or that, commercially it doesn't matter. You're never going to catch, high-profile military aircraft on Flight Radar 24. They even spoof the E6s now, so you can't really see where they're going. So it's okay. It's a decent OSINT tool, but it's not the OSINT tool anymore. When the military themselves start complaining about they can't do this, that, or the other in total secrecy because of the OSINT crowd, the jig is kind of up on the OSINT tools at that point. So monitoring radio, you never know if that's part of a, like right now what we're looking at on the screen, HF radio, that can be just as much shaping operation, psyops, as legitimate eavesdropping or of anything of OSINT quality. So like the new numbers, quote unquote, new number station that was in Farsi. It didn't take long for us radio dorks to narrow that down. That was coming out of that was coming out of Bavaria, Germany, out of an HF station, pinpointed or triangulated not far from, I think it was Spiegelheim down there, and they have a PSYOP unit. They have a PSYOP radio unit attached to that base. So you knew right there, 2 and 2 put together, you knew that Farsi number station was nothing the Iranians were doing. It was something the U.S. was doing on the behalf of probably Israel, as far as PSYOPs and theater shaping activity. And some of it's probably legit, reaching Israeli Mossad spies in Iran after their communications and internet blackout. That's a very certain possibility. And I haven't even checked that station. Once I figured out, and us other nerds figured out what the true purpose behind it was, I don't think I've even tuned into it again, because it's PSYOPs. What value is that? Monitoring a PSYOP has very little OSINT value. Very, very little. If alive to still buy. Why would you Maria, why are you planning on exiting this plane so quickly? You'll still be around. Them shrooms ain't gonna do you in. It's shrooms and single malt whiskey that does most people in, from what I understand. So if you're just on the shrooms, you'll probably be all right. You're gonna still have to go to work tomorrow, Maria. Sorry. Your coworkers will get a good time out of you, probably. All right. Do I even want to bother checking the news wires here after those beautiful national park photos? I don't even know if I want to look at it myself. But would that, tell me, crew, would just stargazing with me rambling along, looking at the stars from Southern Illinois. Would that interest you? What's going on with Israel? You'll find out all week. You're going to be told lies all week long about how no missiles touch the ground and Israel's fighting a good fight. Is that what do you want? You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're working on their greater Israeli project, and Bibi is doing his best to stay out of his home country's court system for corruption and other charges. So, he had a court date that was scheduled for today, Monday, their time, and because they attacked Beirut previous and broke the ceasefire, where Israeli launched a salvo of warning missiles against Israel, guess what? They got an emergency stay. So now Bibi doesn't have to report to court in front of he was due to report in front of the Minister of Justice. Complete separate branch from the executive arm of the, Israeli government. You got the administrative, the Knesset or whatever, and you got the judicial system. They were going to drag his ass in front of the Minister of Justice for corruption and other charges, and that got emergency stayed because they broke the ceasefire and got Iran to launch some missiles toward them. So that's what's going on with Israel. The greatest ally that is not your friend, okay? And the modern country of Israel is not the chosen people. Okay, the biblical chosen people, if you really dive deep down into the legend and how that all works, the lineages and all that great stuff, is the Palestinians. That's where Jesus came from. The modern day Palestinians are not the modern day Israelis, and the ancient Israelis are not the modern day Israelis. But you have all kinds of ministers in the United States being paid vast amounts of money to fool you into thinking that is still so. And it doesn't take much research to see through all that BS. And the real BS is how much money they're trying to take out of your pocket to support these people that are not what they say they are. Now, does that mean the average Israeli walking around Tel Aviv today trying to provide for his family and work a trade or work a job or whatever is evil? No. Nope, you're not going to get me to say that. But the government and shaping of the movements has got some corruption issues, that's for sure. And I have a whole lot of questions. I got a whole host of questions that you can't ask. And if you can't ask the question, or they make it illegal to ask the question, that's as condemning as all you need. That's all you need to know. If you can't even ask certain questions, they make it illegal, or they say, oh, somehow, some way that's hate speech, or it's anti this or anti that. If you can't even ask a simple question, that tells you all you need to know. Doesn't it? Doesn't it now? My freedom, my Constitution. And, we're just as guilty over here with letting stuff slide. Everyone's like, oh, the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment ain't going to do anything. The Fourth and the First has already been trashed. So you can't even get 10 people together to do anything with my Second Amendment, my gun rights. You can't get 10 people together. You can't get 100 people together without 10 of them being feds ready to fracture your organization if you want to do something with the most Second Amendment. You know, I was in FEMA for years, guys. They thought all through that. They're not worried. Okay? There are strata in the federal government when it comes down to cracking down on the U.S. populations. They don't give a single shit about most Second Amendment. They don't care because it's been circumvented and they know it. And all the alphabet soup agencies make sure of that. Day in, day out, 24/7, 365, baby. It's one of the reasons I left government work in many ways. They got your number. So it's going to have to be generational. Okay, Jesus Fan 1984. So is anything really going to happen like the other channels are saying? What are the other channels saying? Are they saying it's going to be some kind of Armageddon? I don't know what the other channels are saying. Are some missiles going to fly and some jets going to drop some bombs, and are innocent poor people that have nothing to do with this intergovernmental BS and corruption going to die? Yeah, probably. Same story all around the world. What are you going to do about it? You know? You know, I'm seeing your symbol's not coming through there, Jesus Fan. Whatever emoji you're using. All I see is gibberish symbol of ×3. So, let's see. I'll tell you what's going to continue to happen is stuff's going to continue to be more expensive as every day goes by. Your dollar is going to be weaker. It's going to be harder and harder to find stuff for you to keep the usual picture of what American daily life is presented to you to be, which is consumerism. So your groceries are going to get more expensive out of the grocery store. There's always going to be groceries in the grocery store. Whether you'll be able to afford them with your currency is the question. So do we just keep living? I'm getting fed up with trying to making living. Yeah. Keep living. That's how you fight it. You give the system a finger and you just keep living in a moral and ethical way. You do your neighbors good, you do your family good, you do yourself good, despite all the odds thrown in your face, despite all the corruption and all the BS thrown in your face. You find every loophole that the 1% utilize to get out of paying and, you know, giving oxygen to this hydra-headed monster that is any local or state or federal government. Yeah, I mean, a lot of other channels, I know I might be considered by some as a spin-off from another channel, but this is my own channel. There's way too much fear-mongering out there on the 24/7 cycle, on the 24/7 news cycle. I know the atomic clock or whatever is like 6 minutes to midnight. You got time to plant some potatoes, dude. You really do. You got some time. Just be a good human out there. And you'll start sucking the oxygen out of this monster. It feeds off of, you've got to slip a little bit to stay ahead, to keep up with the Joneses, you know? You've got to do a few dirty things here and there to keep up with the Joneses. Don't do them. Don't do those dirty things, man. Live clean, live simple. If you got some space to garden, start growing your own food, like go gangbusters. have to use your own gas and vehicle, yeah, try and, I know it sounds impossible, but try and work something out with your employer. And maybe you've got a service or a skill-based job, but you got to factor that in. You know, like I'm a small business owner myself. I have a business that is fairly unrelated to what I talk about on YouTube. I hate to do it, but if gas costs me X, if supplies and materials cost me X, if tooling costs me X, those increases get bidded into the job. So if gas is going up, you got to talk to your boss. Hey man, you're still paying me the same wage and the cost of living is X plus whatever. Can we do anything about it? No. There's still some avenues of the free market you can take advantage of. And where you choose to be employed and what skills you choose to apply, you know, for trade and for wage is still prevalent. So don't take it sitting down. Talk to your boss, man. Talk to the man. You know, and I know a lot of places are losing jobs because of economic downturn and AI and stuff like that. You got to adapt and overcome, brother. If you don't have a recession-proof job, you need to find out a recession-proof skill. And I know that sounds cold and callous, but capitalism is dog eat dog, and that's the system we're under. At least you and I, you know, the plebes, we're under dog eat dog capitalism. We don't get to socialize our losses like the 1% does. You know, but we do have some power to privatize our gains. I hope that helps you, bud. Don't be afraid to talk. I mean, if you're in a job where you feel like you can't talk to your boss, man, find something else. There's got to be a two-way street. Because without you, they don't make anything. Without them, no one's signing your check. It's two ways. So if you can't afford to drive to work, talk to your boss. And if he can't help you or refuses to help you, hopefully you're in a trade skill profession where it's transferable to someplace that might appreciate taking you on without much overhead, you know, training, things like that. But yeah, I know it's rough out there. I am completely private, independent, small business. So I 100% get the struggle. 100%, man. And even in good years, it seems like it's feast or famine. We're in the process of moving. Yeah, I mean, your fuel prices are going to be factored into everything. Everything is connected to itself in the economy. And I think people get that on a subsurface level, but they don't really get it. So like, you know, in 6 months when your Amazon subscriptions jump up in price, okay, some of that is the cost of diesel fuel, but some of that is also because old Baldy blew up one of his toy rockets at Cape Canaveral, you know, 2 weeks ago or whatever. So the old meme is true. They got a picture of the exploding SpaceX rocket and says, "Congratulations, your Prime membership just went up." That's fucking true. They're playing with your money. You know, that's true. That's not separated. In the automotive industry, okay, in these big mega corporations like Volkswagen Audi Group, okay, VAG, they also owned a controlling and manufacturing stake in, I think it was Lamborghini. And I think they still do. Well, for every Lamborghini Matador, whatever, years ago, you had to thank the thousands upon thousands of Volkswagen Jettas that were sold. Because if they didn't sell all those Jettas and Golfs and Passats around the world, not to mention their commercial applications of diesel engines and this, that, and the other, all around the world, if they didn't sell hundreds of thousands of Jettas, you wouldn't have the Lamborghini Matador, or Lamborghini models, whatever they were at the same time, You know what I'm saying? You had to sell 1,000 Jettas in order to even offset the cost of manufacturing before you sold one Lamborghini. So it's the same. So Jeff Bezos blows up a giant rocket that looks like a penis. Your Prime membership's going up, bud. Sorry, Dr. Evil can only privatize his losses so far. When do I think it's all going to collapse? It's collapsed, bud. You're living through the collapse. It's already done. 2008 was the collapse. Okay? The financial collapse. Things happen in decades. History happens in decades. And we're fed a daily news cycle. So you don't realize, that kind of wisdom only comes with age. Why do you think so many people are nostalgic for the 80s and 90s now? You see that in social media feeds. Old Whitesnake songs, acoustic Whitesnake guitar riffs next to old 80s cars, and it has 18 bajillion likes on it. Those were the days. That's the saying. Those were the days. People go back when your current life is shitty, you reminisce for the good old days. Well, for us, our childhood, the first 1986 Trans Am you saw, now you're 40, 50, 60 years old, man, you saw your uncle's Trans Am for the first... 1986 probably had a 305 small block in it. It was a shitty-ass car that burned your eyeballs from rich mixture because they couldn't computerize a quadrijet carburetor far enough, to get it to run right. Piece of shit car. But anyway, those were the good old days. You don't get overnight collapse. Rome didn't collapse in a day. Okay? Jesus fan 1984. I'm guessing you were born around 1984. You're a mid-80s baby, so you're in your 40s, or you're eclipsing 40. If you study the fall of Rome, as big as the empire was, the first inkling most communities got that Rome was fallen was a storm came out and washed out a bridge that the Romans had built, or more accurately, the Turks might have built if it was Eastern Europe. If you ever get a chance, read A Bridge Over the Adria. It was Albania. I think it was Albania or Serbia's only Pulitzer Prize winner author. I can't remember the author, but basically, their first inkling was no one came to repair it. A bridge that has been there for generations and as old as time and as old as the hills got washed out from a spring storm, and nobody came to repair it. But other than that, life went on. You still had the harvest to take care of. You still had shearing or whatever. You still had whatever cottage industry your family did. Maybe you made cheese. Maybe you made wine. Maybe you were a silversmith, blacksmith, whatever you did in town. You just noticed, hey, the freaking Romans didn't come back and repair the bridge. I wonder what's going on. That was your only inkling. Hollywood will do their best to convince you that an apocalypse happens in 2 hours. In reality, it takes years. World War II raged on for just about a decade. But the U.S. only got involved after Pearl Harbor was bombed. 1941. And then by the time we got our shit spun up and crushing down on everything, we steamrolled over Europe with the help of the Soviets because they were backstabbed. And we had our hands full in the Pacific, that's for damn sure. And it wasn't until the atomic bomb that we really convinced the Japanese that going forward was nutso. But World War II started before any conflict in Europe. World War II started in Manchuria with the Japanese invasion of Manchuria in the early 1930s. Just as Vietnam didn't start, the conflict between North and South Vietnam, communist forces and colonial forces in Vietnam started with the French Indochina. They had empire there. And when the French got kicked out of Vietnam, then suddenly it became a commie versus capitalist thing, and the U.S. got involved to help the South Vietnamese. But the Vietnam War was raging long before the U.S. got involved in the 60s, in the late 60s. So Rush Limbaugh used to say, for a lot of people, history begins the day they're born. I'm not accusing you of that. But there's a reason that when Vladimir Putin is sat down and he's asked about the Ukraine war and why did he invade Ukraine, he starts back in the 1300s or some crazy shit. To the average Western mind, it's crazy. But what he's doing is he's sensibly trying to lay out, long story short, that area is Russian. The area that he invaded and he folded back into the now Russian Federal Republic. As bloodthirsty as that dude is, and all world leaders are bloodthirsty, narcissist, psychopaths. Okay, I'm not defending Putin, but he's got a point. And what happened there, and it's very unpopular in the OSINT bro circle to even utter this, but it took decades of NATO encroachment throughout Europe that led up to the Ukraine war. So Putin, being crazy dude as he is, starts in the 1300s, whatever. Basically, all he needs to cover is 50 years worth of history, and you'll get the picture. Not to mention all the shady shit that was going on there that NATO and the United States and Ukraine was doing right on the Russian doorstep. The same shit that if we had happening, or we do have happening in some cases in our southern border, and you see Southcom all spun up, blowing boats up in the Caribbean and, putting the U.S. on the warpath in Central and South America. It's the same reasons. They were tired of dealing with that shit. Enough's enough. Now you're going to get war. Boom, baby. Something wrong with the war you ordered? We put in that order by decisions that were made a generation ago. So what was that talk when you came on New York Prepper saying keep your head on a swivel? What was that about? Because there's been times that I've gotten information that directly affect and is a danger vector into the U.S. population. And so at somewhat risk to myself, not even my online, I'm not talking about just online personality or reputation, physical law-abiding reputation, I warned people about some shit that was about to go down, and luckily it was thwarted. But the few times that I've gone on that channel as a moderator and warned people, keep your head on a swivel this weekend, was due to direct intelligence against the population of the United States, my neighbors, my countrymen, my friends, my relatives, my neighbors. There's stuff I can't talk about even on this channel, even on my own channel. It just can't. But if I do go out on a limb and say, be very conscious of your OPSEC and be very conscious of your surroundings, no matter where you're at in the United States, it's because I've seen something that would make your toes curl up. And thankfully, both in the intelligence community of the United States and the U.S. military and government sectors and in diplomatic sectors, it was thwarted. The shit that was about to go down didn't. That's what you want. That's good. You know, makes me look like an idiot to come on a channel and say, hey, and then nothing happens. But if you notice, I don't do that every time I live stream. That was the only avenue I had to reach a wide audience at the time. Now I've got my own channel. If I get the same intel again, you better believe I will stop what I'm doing, business or family or personal wise, fire up this channel, and I will come talk to you, and I'll tell you exactly what I know and what I see, what I've heard, to warn you. I will do that. I don't have any problem doing that, as long as it will not run me afoul, because if I run afoul too hard and I get silenced or put away, I can't warn you when the time comes. So it does nobody any good to cry wolf nonsensically over and over again, because there is some level of threat against the country and against the population from time to time. It's not every day. So you know, like I said before with this channel, I don't need to monetize it. And some places monetize their channel by scaring people over and over and over and over again, saying the threat's always there. I'll level with you, and on my own channel, it's not every day. Usually it's twice a year, and it's not like every 6 months, 3 months on, 3 months. You never really know. But put it this way, at that time, when I was warning everybody on that channel, that was the only avenue I had to speak to a wider audience, there was a potential threat to darken banking, power plants, and what's called primary infrastructure, oil, natural gas movement. There was an active effort that was just about ready to slip out of the envelope at the time that was currently underway. And I got messages through my contacts, mainly through Fort Meade in the U.S. military cybersecurity division that I still have some contacts in, that let me know this shit's almost out of containment. Turn that down, sorry about that. Over the horizon radar starting up a new frequency. But anyway, can it still happen? Yeah. Did they learn from that experience and it almost spilling out over the edges? Of course. And that goes to speak for the professionalism of our military and our intelligence community and our diplomatic community. A lot of people don't realize the U.S. Department of the Treasury is part of the whole umbrella of our national defense structure. So when we do sanctions and things like that, it's, through the Treasury, and we sanction certain organizations or certain people in other countries. That's a level of warfare. It's financial warfare. Well, the same thing's trying to be done to us all the time. Main state actors, true terroristic actors, are constantly trying to figure out where the holes are, dive in, and any victory in this day and age of 5G warfare, any victory, no matter how small, that you can present evidence of as an enemy actor, and this is going to sound crazy, but let's say, without a shadow of a doubt, a IRGC element messes with water treatment control of a small town in, pick a state, Iowa, and a bunch of people get sick. No one dies. Just the level of the water treatment, water purification for drinking water gets effed with, and a bunch of chemicals exceed limit that, make some people sick. Well, in 5G warfare, that news of that incident, and if it was truly done by an IRGC element, would circle the world and provide a overwhelming victory in the idea of the prowess and power and reach of the IRGC cyber warfare group, whatever it might be. That's 5G. That's the war you're in right now, crew. That's 5G warfare. It's not 10,000 soldiers being killed in a giant land offensive in some region in the world. Because with nuclear powers, you can't do that shit anymore. 5G warfare is someone in California reading how the IRGC Cyber Warfare Division made 18 people sick in Iowa. And that person's thought processes and outlook toward their own government, outlook toward their fellow man being affected. You see what I'm saying? We're in a whole different level, a new age of warfare, and a lot of it is psychological. And that's what people don't get. They think that airframes and bombs and artillery strikes and missiles, that's surface chatter. X number of missiles being launched from Iran and X number of missiles or Y number of missiles making it through and landing in Tel Aviv, that's bullshit. That's news fodder. That's nothing. That's fireworks at a small town parade. Because Israel has a Samson option, and Iran has the backing of China, Russia, and in some parts, in some avenues, Pakistan, which are all nuclear powers. So nukes could fly, and you could erase entire millions of population in a snap. That's kinetic warfare now in the nuclear age. Everything else is just splashing in the kiddie pool. You're just splashing. Like you splash someone with two hands, you're messing with your buddies and you're splashing them in the pool and that chlorine water gets in their eyes. Oh, dang it. Oh. That's all missiles and airstrikes are. But people remember back to the last conflict, 3G warfare in World War II, and it was casualties and KIA, POWs, missing in action, all through Vietnam. The Gulf War was 4G warfare, the start of 4G warfare. September 11th, Afghanistan, Iraq, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom was the last gasps of 4G warfare. It's 5G now, baby. And your country's collapsing down around your ears. Your dollar's almost worthless. So you better learn how to take care of yourself, take care of your neighbors, how to grow some food. how to stave off the alpha-gal syndrome in the skeeters that have the biowarfare in them. Sick like how? Just imagine reading that. It's the influence, right? So I don't know where you're at. Let's say you're in Texas or Oklahoma, and you read that something like that happened in Iowa. How would you feel about that? If they can do it in Iowa, they can do it in Oklahoma. Oh man, my mom or my grandma or whoever, my uncle's a little bit sick or is a diabetic or got some, immunology problems because of some illness. I can't get him, if he gets a hold of bad water, he's dead, Puts fear in you. It gets you thinking about things you ordinarily wouldn't worry about. That's 5G warfare. It's psychological. And the media cycle in your own home country, your own propaganda, is part of 5G warfare. Western and pro-Israeli news media reporting Iran launches a barrage of missiles today because they're bad terrorists and all were intercepted. Okay, first of all, not all of them were intercepted because there's video to the contrary that came out today from respected channels. But someone will read that headline and say, it's under control. Look at the prowess of Western and Israeli military. They can't even land it's propaganda to get you feel a certain way. So you keep paying your taxes. So you go to the mall. So you go to Cheddar's or Olive Garden and you live life normally, because if you don't, the whole system will start to fracture because everything is tight in the margins. And I'm talking 1, 2, 3, 4%. Your grocery store operates on 3% margins. Your restaurant operates on 5% margins. People start thinking a certain way where they start getting thrifty. They start looking out for each other. They start looking at their tax bill. They start checking their subscriptions. And Baldy can't launch rockets anymore. God forbid. The flying spaghetti monster forbid. He can't blow up a rocket on a government taxpayer-funded launch pad and ruin it for 10 years. Yeah, some of that was a ramble, Jesus fan. You kind of got me spun up a little bit, which can happen from time to time. So I hope I answered your question. And usually I answer a question and I go on a long rant, which, sorry about that. But I try to string my points together so the wider audience can get it as well. You like it? Well, I like rambling sometimes too, so it works out. I figured everybody'd be happy with my pretty pictures and then we'd call it a night, but it is midnight actually. I probably should turn in for the night. I don't know how many more people we got hanging around. And it's just my opinion. It's just my armchair general court jester rodeo clown opinion. You don't bank on it. I could be wrong. If you talk to people, you'll find out that I don't know, batting of 500 or whatever the sports ball reference is to 50-50. But yeah, it's getting late, and I think I'm going to hang it up for tonight. We're going on 3 hours, 23 minutes. Clock just turned over on the live. 3 hours, 23 minutes on the live stream here, and a lot of it's just been me rambling on about stuff. But crew, I appreciate you hanging out. I hope you got something out of this. Please like, subscribe, do the things for the channel. I'm going to leave the chat open for a little while. if anybody wants to talk to each other. You've been following me when I first came to New York Prepper? Well, thank you. I was highly affiliated with another channel before that got kicked off of YouTube. We had some disagreements on how to treat people, and I parted ways with that channel. New York Prepper was kind of a weird fit for me because I know a lot of people on NYP channel are very religious. They're very Christian. They're very pro-Israeli, and that's all well and good to fight for what you think is right. We're all doing the same thing. But I have some questions. I have some criticism, and I'm not overtly Christian. I am technically, I'm an atheist. I'll put it out there for you. It's hard telling a Jesus fan 1984 that you're an atheist, but yeah, that's my religious outlook. I've just traveled too many places, talked to too many people with non-Christian backgrounds, and been in parts of the world and been treated just fine. Aladdin didn't come cut my head off when I was traveling around the Middle East, even though my own nation was making war on some of their people. So, yeah. It's great if it gives you comfort. I will never take that away from someone. If a religious belief gives you some kind of comfort or helps you view the world a certain way until you can figure out on your own how it is. I've met a lot of people that never converted. I'm not like this, rolling billboard for atheism or anything, but many, many people that I've talked to is they were raised a certain way, whether it was Catholic or Protestant or Muslim or Hindu, and then they met other people and they realized that, hey, they're just other people. They're just a slightly different flavor than what you are. And, it might have been your grandparents, it might have been your own state media that told you these people were the enemy and they don't think like you, and, they want to eat your children, they want to steal all your money, and none of that bullshit's true. It's like, well, great. So long story short, without me getting drugged down deep into the weeds too much, is if it brings you comfort, by all means, may the Lord bless you, may the Lord keep you. Inshallah, Shangri-La, great. But is it a defining element to my being anymore? I was raised Christian. I was raised in a very traditional conservative family, farming family, Protestant. Grandparents never missed Sunday at a Protestant church. My dad was on the church board for many, many, many years. But at the same time, it just didn't do anything for me. It was a community activity. It wasn't a spiritual activity at that point. So I think that's how religion is for a lot of people, is it's really a community activity, and they do it because they think it's a spiritual activity. But it's not really feeding your spirit or your soul. You're just repeating and going through motions, But if those motions and those rituals bring you comfort, far be it from me to take that away from somebody. If it brings you comfort in a time of trouble, I'm never going to poke fun at anybody for that. If they pray, the old, there's no atheists in foxholes. Fine, man. But don't let it do your thinking for you at the same time. Religion's great, but think for yourself. And there's a lot of minds poisoned by platforms of religion out there. Christian, Muslim, and Eastern. For all the peacenik Buddhists, there's some sects of Buddhism that, they don't think too fondly of foreigners. There's a whole Forbidden City vibe in certain sects of Buddhism. Not so much Hinduism, but it's a mess. To me, speaking freely and honestly with you, religion and the idea of gods and things like that, religious deities, are mind-made, man-made mind filters. They help you see the world a certain way that's comforting, but they're man-made. Yeah, there's just an awful lot of confliction. There's an awful lot of conflicting ideas that go forth with a lot of religious teachings. So it gets explained away, and that's a man-made thing. That's a man-made mind filter. And what really gets me is a lot of these religions are, if you trace them back down to their roots, like in current time, a good example is Jesus and the Muslims. And no one gets to be an atheist by ignorance. You get to be, you end up at atheism because you put some thought and some work into at least some basic research about at least Abrahamic faiths and things like that. But the lie gets told that Muslims are incompatible with Christians and Jews and this and that and the other. And yeah, that's true. There are certain Muslim groups out there that will kill other faiths or tax faiths, or they will bend the Quran, the teachings in the Quran, or a certain passage in the Quran to do some kind of evil, just like Christians will and have in the past bend certain passages to explain away genocide or this, that, or the other, or murder. That's a very human thing, is to twist what's supposed to be good and pure and all that stuff. But like Jesus, to pretty much all sects of the Muslims, all different denominations of the Muslim faith, is a very widely respected prophet as well as Mary. But what are you taught in Western media? That all Muslims hate Christians and they'll chop your head off. I've traveled through North Africa and into the Levant. I've walked in backcountry mosques just to see what they're like. No one came after me, bro. No one tried to tax me because I wasn't a Muslim. And actually in reality, there is such a thing as, for regular humans out there that don't watch Fox News or CNN or whatever, just people trying to make through their day and raise their family and earn a living. There's this thing in Arabic culture of hosting and being a good host and protecting your guest. And there was movies made about it. In Afghanistan, the number of POWs that the Taliban, didn't get their hands on, the number of POWs was very, very low, because you don't turn your guests over to the local warlord. You find someone on your property, right? And you're a sheep herder, or you're an opium farmer or whatever. This dude didn't do anything to you. You didn't do anything to him. Guess what? You're going to protect him as your guest. And that might even mean drawing rifles on your fellow Afghans or your local warlord to protect your guest. But what are you taught in the media? Everyone wants to chop everybody's heads off. It's all bullshit, bro. It's just constant, never-ending division. And you go out in the real world, and you go to some of these places, and you find out it's retarded, fake, and gay. Okay? You are BS to the max. You are BS maxing by your own people. Yeah. Jesus Fan 1984 made a good point about Halloween, a pagan holiday with Celtic, Druidic roots. You know? Easter, you know, depending on how quote-unquote pure of a Christian you want to be, you got to look at Easter a certain way too. You know, and find out why that was more of a Germanic pagan holiday than anything, but it was adapted to tribes to accept Christianity, you know. And the Native Americans, they can tell you about conversion and conversion efforts and all the stories that they were told through the decades. You know, when you had a Spanish monastery, or the Jesuits and the Spanish that came up through South America in the 15 and 1600s, and, you know, tried converting everything that had two legs and moved over to Catholicism and Christianity. I mean, they tried every trick in the book, and it worked on a lot of them. You know, there's a lot of Christian Native American tribes out there, but Philippines is an interesting story too. If you look at how Catholicism entered into the Philippines against their native population and beliefs, they, you know, in a lot of European tradition, you know, and Middle Eastern tradition, where, you know, the Abrahamic faith came out of, and I don't mean to turn into like a religious sermon here, but just to juxtapose one idea against the other, you know, it's the story of the shepherd, right? And your flock. So a priest or a minister is the shepherd over his flock of poor plebes, or, you know, commoners or peasants or whatever. And in Europe and the Middle East, you know, it's the lamb. It's the lamb and the lion and the shepherd over the lamb, to guide his flock to safety. And, you know, sheep are important livestock and husbandry animals in those areas. Europe, Middle East, all that. Well, in the Philippines and in certain areas of, you know, the Asian Pacific countries, they didn't have native lambs or sheep. You know, it wasn't native to the area, but other livestock was prized. So in the Philippines, it's not uncommon to go into some of these churches, and the priest will refer to the people in the congregation as his swine, because pigs were the relatable, identifiable, important livestock. So you were the keeper of the swine. It's just a trick. It's just a mind relation trick. You know, but can you imagine sitting down in your church in Granby, Oklahoma or whatever? It's like, well, bless all ye my swine. It would sound out of place, because culturally it is out of place. But that's a real thing in the Philippines. Is certain congregations will be referred to as bless my swine, you know, my swine, because that's the important animal. So it's just a bunch of hooey. It's just a bunch of hooey for control. You know, you've got a certain segment of the population, kings and royalty, that want their control, and then you've got the priest classes that have always wanted their control through mysticism and hooiness and magic. It's just a form of magic. And the magic only works in the mind, in the human mind. And I know that the whole idea of this, me ranting on about my swine and all that, is going to piss off a whole bunch of people. But you know what? Too bad. It's what I've found over the years. It's my life experience. It's my observation. And that's where I've arrived after, you know, I didn't put careless thought into it. I didn't sit up one day and said, you know what, I don't like this priest, or I don't like this family at church, and I'm just going to be an atheist because that's easy. No, it's a hard thing, especially where I'm from, where my family's from. Very conservative, Germanic, deep Presbyterian, Protestant, and Catholic roots in my part of the country, every family went to church. So I didn't arrive here lightly. I arrived here because I traveled, because I studied, and like I said, I'm not so disrespectful and rude to make fun of anyone for believing in their choice of religion. If you want to and it brings you comfort, I ain't going to take that away from you, because we all need some of that. But it just doesn't work on me. So when someone comes up to me and says, you got to do this because Jesus said, works on me about as well as someone coming up to me and says, well, you got to do this because Allah said, even though they're one and the same, Allah and, not Jesus, but God. Or Shiva, sorry, you got to find different magic. And tobacco might work on me. Good beer works on me. If you know what you're doing, making macaroni and cheese, that can work on me. Good brisket works on me. Good steak works on me. But Shiva, Jesus, or Allah, no, you're going to have to bring more than that. Yeah, I'm just reading through the comments here. It's like, some people, they get to the end. I'm kind of talking to you, Jesus fan. They go through a transition where it's like they have enough life experience where they kind of get let down by what the religion they were raised with, and that might have been Christianity or Judaism or some Abrahamic faith or whatever, and they kind of get to the end where it's like they can't quite reconcile their life experience with how the idea of a good God is supposed to work. So they go to an Eastern religion. And it's kind of like the last bastion of having some scripted form of how the spiritual world works, so all hope is not lost and all, and then they get caught up in that, and they end up in shamanism and multi-theism, and they end up somewhere north of being a Buddhist and somewhere south of being Hindu. And then you go a step further from that, and it's like, well, then you got to, you don't have anything after that. And if you really think hard about it, you can't really worship the universe because the universe doesn't give two fucks about you. The universe will tear an entire solar system apart because a sun moved 2 parsecs too close to it and ripped a hole in the space-time continuum and the gravity shelf in that solar system, and you've got 8 planets 18 times the size of Earth ripped apart, in the span of 3 hours. Not going to find it there either. The universe don't give no fuck about you. Yeah, and I think it was the old, I'm reading some of Maria's posts here too. Was it Voltaire? I think Voltaire, when he honestly wrote about, not being convinced of a God and that, Abrahamic system of faith, he said, well, what would you do if you were in your final moments you were confronted by God and you were proven wrong there is a God? He would say, just needed some more evidence. Why did you so thoroughly hide from me? That kind of thing. I'm probably butchering his quote. I'm sure he wrote something way more eloquent than what I can remember at 12:21 Central Time on a Sunday night. But yeah, I don't see it. Pray for me, I guess. I'm not going to make fun of you, but at the same time, I'm not going to let you hang in my chat and like street preach and just talk about Jesus. The same as, and I wouldn't for someone that wanted to, preach about pick it, pick whatever. I'm not going to let somebody hang in my chat and proselytize endlessly. Not that anyone has. Everyone's been well behaved. But I think you know what I'm saying. yeah, just think for yourself. Look out for your fellow man. There's only a few hanging in here yet, crew. So I'm gonna start shutting this down here. I think we had a good run tonight. Happy to show you my pictures. Hang in there. It's going to be kind of a rough week for some of you, but just look out for other people so other people look out for you, because there's a whole system that's not looking out for you. Put it that way. Yeah, just be a good person. That's a good way to put it. Just be a good person. So, all right, with that, crew, we're slipping out of here. We're going to do a fast shutdown. Thanks for being here. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your Nana about me. Appreciate you all being here. Tell your Uncle Jesse and your Aunt Sam and Cousin Jimmy, and about how much fun you have on the channel and the stuff we talk about. And I am going to try and do more of these formats before I let you go, to let the diehards know that are still in here. I am going to try and move away from doing, all doom and gloom, we're going to try and have some nice live streams. Look at some interesting stuff, have some good visuals. Maybe do some radio stuff. Do some sat radio stuff live. Contacting sat birds and looking at the stars together and taking pictures of distant galaxies. I really don't have to raise too much money to get that equipment. I just got to do it separate from my business, so it kind of jives, because even though I'm going to fight the man, I don't really want to get audited either. So, yep, I'll find the funds on the private side. I've got to pay myself and then buy some equipment, all that stuff too. So, all right, guys, crew, it's been fun. We're 15 minutes shy of 4 hours on the stream. So good night. Be good. I'll see you on the flip side. I'll see you when I see you. If something earth-shattering is coming up, I'll break into a live and warn you all. But I think this week's just going to be kind of sucky and hot. So take care. Peace out.